When most people picture an octopus, what comes to mind? A creature with too many arms, drifting through coral reefs, maybe changing color every once in a while. Not too far from the shores of Washington, in waters so cold they'll numb your entire body in just a few minutes, there's a creature that quietly breaks that picture apart. It has 3 hearts. Its blood isn't red, it's blue. And its entire body can squeeze through any opening small enough for its beak to fit. I researched and read everything I could find about this animal. Each time I believed I couldn't be surprised further, it left me in awe, and it opened new doors in my mind I didn't expect. As I followed its increasingly complex traits, one characteristic kept resurfacing in nearly every article I read, and the more I sat with it, the more I felt like I was finally getting to know this animal for the first time. The giant Pacific octopus, the world's largest octopus species, lives in the cold, nutrient-rich waters stretching from Alaska to Puget Sound, and from there down to Monterey Canyon in California. About 40 feet down, it rests in a crevice slightly larger than itself, completely alone. And it's hard to deny that inside that silence sits a world we're only beginning to understand. When you hear it has 3 hearts, you might think that's simply an upgrade, better than 1 heart working overtime. But wait a second. Because this goes beyond being an interesting fact, and things start to get a little strange, and I haven't even mentioned the blue blood yet. This is where I want to invite you in with me, because for me, this stopped being just research a long time ago. It became an invitation. 3 hearts, blue blood. At first glance, these just sounded like cool trivia. I mean, a lot of animals have weird features, right? But something about the octopus kept nagging at me. Why these specific traits? What was the deeper story behind them? 2 of these hearts are called branchial hearts. Their only job is to pump blood to the octopus's gills. The 3rd heart is where things get interesting. It takes the freshly oxygenated blood and sends it through the entire body, to the arms, the organs, and the brain. Actually, to all of its brains. We'll get to that in a moment. This is where the research itself became my guide. To understand just how extraordinary this system really is, you only need to look at the work coming out of institutions like the Smithsonian and the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. The picture painted by researchers who've spent years documenting this system looks less like a typical animal circulatory system and more like an engineering blueprint. 2 auxiliary pumps prepare the blood for oxygenation, while a 3rd pumps it through the entire body, and the whole system runs inside a body that doesn't have a single bone in it. But what most people never expect is this. The octopus's blood isn't red, it's blue. Not a pale, ordinary blue, but a deep blue that looks almost surreal in the dark water. And once you understand the reason behind it, you'll have stepped fully into the octopus's complicated world. And I promise you, you won't look at this animal the same way again. Human blood is red because it contains hemoglobin, an iron-rich protein. In octopus blood, the job of carrying oxygen belongs to hemocyanin instead. Put simply, hemocyanin has copper at its center rather than iron, and when copper binds to oxygen, it turns blue instead of red. At first glance, that might look like a simple chemical swap. It isn't, because the color isn't the important difference between hemocyanin and hemoglobin. Hemocyanin is part of a system that lets the octopus survive in cold, low-oxygen water, and it directly determines whether the animal stays alive. I want to explain why this detail fascinates me so much. That blue color isn't some random trait. It's an ancient answer to what the environment demanded of it. Cold water, the difficulty of moving oxygen through the body, and enduring all of that for millions of years. The octopus's story points at something simpler than that. Sometimes, to really understand a living creature, you have to understand the world it was forced to survive in. But the truly surprising part starts now. When the octopus starts swimming, one of its 3 hearts stops. Yes, the systemic heart, the one that supplies oxygen to the entire body. It doesn't slow down, it stops completely. For those few seconds of full speed swimming through open water, the main pump of its circulatory system simply isn't running. That's probably why you're far more likely to see an octopus crawling over rocks than swimming in open water. Crawling is much slower, but the heart keeps beating the whole time. Swimming might be fast, but for the octopus, speed comes at a real cost. It's a move saved for genuine emergencies. Put yourself in its place for a second. If swimming meant paying the price with your own heart, you wouldn't do it unless you absolutely had to. That's exactly why the octopus chooses the slower path. It crawls over the rocks. It practically walks across the sand. Because speed isn't automatically an advantage, sometimes it's a liability. What looks like a simple choice from the outside is really the result of a much bigger energy calculation running underneath. And the very system that keeps the octopus alive has an enemy it never used to have to face. Hemocyanin is extremely sensitive to changes in the water's acidity. Here's the reality. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, its chemistry is shifting. And what does that shift mean for an animal whose blood runs on a copper-based protein? How long can a creature like this survive in an ocean that's changing faster than it can adapt? There's a strange, almost cruel irony in it. A system perfected over millions of years for one set of conditions can turn into a vulnerability the moment those conditions change. There's one more system worth understanding before we reach the hardest part of this story: the octopus's nervous system. Its central brain sits between its eyes, but most of its nervous system doesn't live there at all. Neurons are packed densely into each of its 8 arms, densely enough that some researchers call the arms mini brains. Each arm can move without waiting for a signal from the central brain. Beyond touch and hunting, the arms can detect chemical signals and respond to them on their own. We'll go deeper into that in a future video, but it's worth noting that lab studies have shown a single arm can navigate a maze independently, and even help guide the others through it. People who work with octopuses every day, aquarium staff, mostly often point out something just as striking. No 2 octopuses behave the same way. Some are curious, some are shy, some are downright mischievous. They solve puzzles to reach a reward. They can open jar lids. Most of them recognize the staff who care for them regularly. There are even documented cases of octopuses slipping out of their own tanks at night, raiding a neighboring tank, and making it back before morning. I've talked about behavior like this in earlier videos, and it still amazes me every time. It's natural to assume intelligence has to come from one place, a single brain acting as command center. Octopuses quietly dismantle that assumption. Once you look closely at their nervous system, you realize intelligence doesn't have to be concentrated anywhere at all. We still don't fully understand how any of this is possible, and the reach of that nervous system isn't limited to behavior. Even an octopus's skin works like a system that can respond to its surroundings almost instantly, changing color in less than a second by shifting thousands of pigment cells at once, while also changing texture. That's what lets it disappear completely into a rock or a piece of coral, fully camouflaged, or flash a warning bright enough to scare off something that shouldn't be there. And there's one more detail we need to sit with, because it changes the meaning of everything I've just told you. 3 hearts. Blue blood built for a changing, hostile ocean. A nervous system spread across 8 independent arms. Skin that can rewrite itself in an instant. All of it engineered, tested, refined over millions of years. Now we're about to find out what all of that was actually for. Despite this extraordinary system, most octopuses live for only a year or 2. 3 hearts, blue blood, a distributed nervous system, skin that changes color and texture instantly, and in a short time it's all over. Even the giant Pacific octopus, the longest living of all octopus species, can only survive up to 4 or 5 years under the best conditions. I'm sad to say that many other species get far less time than that. Most females may only once in their entire lives, then stop eating altogether to protect their eggs. Shortly after the eggs hatch, they die. I went into this in detail in an earlier video, the mother octopus's greatest sacrifice. All of that engineering for a life this short. That's the part I can't quite get past. My mind keeps circling back to this. When you think about how most of them adapt to the harsh conditions of the ocean entirely on their own, knowing they only have a few years to live. Everything they manage to pack into that time, which, by our sense of time, would pass in the blink of an eye, genuinely fascinates me. They explore, they solve problems, they reshape their environment and adapt to it. They fit an enormous amount of living into a small amount of time. This creature didn't just teach me a set of facts about a species, it gave me a different way of thinking about what a life can hold. That's why I want to ask you something, because I keep asking myself the same. If our time were that limited, could we use it better? If a few short years were the reality you were working with, would you spend today differently? Would the things you've been putting off suddenly matter more? When you look at an animal that never got a say in any of this, is there a lesson in it for you too? A few hundred miles off the coast of California, the seafloor suddenly drops away. The Monterey Canyon, in places, even deeper than the Grand Canyon. The depths are so extreme that sunlight never reaches them. Researchers send remotely operated vehicles, cameras rolling down into that darkness. Every so often, an octopus drifts the lens, weightless, unaware that it's carrying a body shaped by millions of years of adaptation, its blue blood quietly moving oxygen through every part of it. Down there, the noise of the surface world is long gone. Aside from the mechanical hum of the equipment, none of the sounds we're used to exist. There's no color except the thin beam of a spotlight. And right in the middle of all that emptiness, it simply lives, without struggling, without complaint, just as it has lived since long before we ever thought to wonder about it, much like its ancestors did, for hundreds of millions of years before that. What's genuinely worth sitting with is that octopuses have existed in a form nearly identical to today's since before the dinosaurs. Whatever comes to mind when you hear ancient life, octopuses were already there. Long before any land animal learned to walk, their ancestors were already in the ocean, and after all that time, they're still here. Maybe the real question was never about the octopus's progress, it's about how narrow our own definition of progress actually is. A living thing can perceive its environment, learn, solve problems, and survive without ever following the biological path we're used to calling advanced. Maybe intelligence was never a single mold to begin with. Maybe it's simply the shape a life takes in response to what it's up against. I said at the start that this animal has always amazed me. I'll say it again. Everything I learn about them keeps amazing me, and I'll keep doing my best to pass that along to you. The fact that an octopus has 3 hearts, and that its blood runs blue, makes a lot more sense to me now. I hope it does to you too. And that's where I'll leave it, because I can't decide what this story means to you. Somewhere in that dark ocean tonight, the 3 hearts of a creature that never stops amazing us are still beating. It expects nothing. It's completely at peace with whatever it's been given. It lives without expecting anything back. And you can't help but ask yourself, can we say the same thing about our own lives?